Summerfield since 2001 in Summerfield. We moved away for a short time. It was with Ecolab, and took a role in the corporate office in St. Paul, Minnesota, so we moved up there for 2 years, but had the opportunity to come back 2 years later, and we wanted to be back in Summerfield. So we probably live a mile away from where we lived here the first time. So we knew we wanted to come back. The things that drew us here were originally were schools. We were going to have a family. We wanted to be somewhere we had a little bit more space. We lived in Adams Farm and didn't like all the houses so close together and cookie cutter models, so we moved out here to get a little more space, but definitely the schools were a big draw. So I have 2 kids, one in high school, one just finished Summerfield Elementary, headed to middle school, and so I'm involved with them and their activities.
Great, great. Well, thank you. I thought that would help. You all know each other better than I do, and I hope you know each other better now after going around the table. And you bring a lot of experience to it, and a lot of passion for this community, and you've seen a lot of other places that you probably, with the first Summerfield, would avoid. We're going to dig deeper as we get into this process. We'll go a little bit further later in the agenda as we try to elevate the issues for the committee to explore.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So the next thing we are going to do is talk about the vice chair and secretary roles. I did send them out to everyone, and they're actually listed in the ordinance. So I just wanted to see if we have anyone who wants to volunteer for either one of those roles. Any for vice chair? Okay. What about secretary? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to think about it by the end of the meeting. We will bring this up again, and then we're going to pick straws if no one raises their hand.
We can pretend like there's a dot on the back of the card.
I'll volunteer for vice chair.
Okay. Does anyone else want to volunteer for vice chair? If not, moving forward and electing, do we have a motion, right? You have to do a motion?
What you need
Or
is,
do we just elect?
well, you need a motion, then you need a second, then you need to vote affirmative and negative. So he volunteered, so what would be appropriate is for someone to make to motion for him to be vice chair.
Second.
And
Let's have a vote. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope, looks like you have the job. Now, secretary. On to the next one. Anyone interested in secretary? It's going to be a very important note-taking position. Okay, think about it over the next hour, and we will come back to it, and we will hopefully have someone who has thought about it and said they want to do it. Okay, so now we're going to go over the committee ground rules, and we kind of put some ideas out there. We can formalize those if we want to as a committee, and then we'll talk about the process.
We're an agenda item ahead.
Oh, sorry, I skipped one, didn't
No
I?
worries.
Sorry, go back to 5, and the policy and ethics, I just closed it.
And before you, did you introduce yourself, Bill? Well, did you make your own introduction, Bill McNeil?
Yes.
You could, okay, so everybody knows.
Introduce yourself.
And then,
I'll
and
give
the
you
roles.
the 30-second version. I was going to do it and talk about what a facilitator does and doesn't do.
Okay.
Involved in planning at the local and state level for about 30 years, Winston-Salem, High Point. Involved in community development and growth management. My wife absolutely couldn't stand Raleigh anymore, so we moved to Williamsburg 5 years ago. I'm semi-retired, but involved in projects that where I think my skills can help.
so one of the things that's exciting to the town is the new folks, particularly that this committee engages that haven't been involved in town committees before. And I start with that because while you have very impressive credentials regardless of what you're doing. I'm sure there's a lot that you don't know about how these committees work, and so that's what I want to hit the highlights of for you. The committee ordinance, I'm hoping everyone has read it in the interview process. It's on the website, easy to find, and I just want to hit those highlights because this really puts a lot of form to you as far as how it's going to operate. And so this is an ad hoc committee. That means when the charge of this committee is over, the service on the committee will be over. And so we've got 16 members here, 13 voting members, 2 liaisons, one from council and one from zoning board, and then the facilitator. And so when you're voting, just like that vote before, keep that focus to those 13 voting resident members. And so if it says ex officio, that means in our instance non-voting. And like I said, most of you have probably already read this, so I'm not going to go over the roles of the facilitator and responsibility. That'll get covered in more detail, but I am going to just read for the members, or really just hit some highlights of that. So this committee's charge is to be focused on those substantive issues that have come out of this contentious PD process. And while it's not about plan development, that's where that was really the impetus, that issue for the formation of this committee to help move us forward with our development ordinances, and specifically in bringing those more in line with the comprehensive plan. The position of secretary, which you elect, will be very important because these meetings are, the minutes that get recorded by the secretary, that's the forum for the citizens to know really what's going on with this committee, and you know a lot of eyes are watching this committee. Specifically, whoever is elected this evening, we have a committee meeting minutes policy, and I'm going to give that to you tonight, so you'll won't have any questions about what's expected there, timetable-wise, format, those kind of things. And the last page of the ordinance, moving quickly, Andrew, for you, is just want to touch on meeting conduct. It goes without saying that this committee needs to operate professionally. Doesn't mean there won't be a lot of disagreements, but that's to be expected. Andrew, if you don't have it yet, I'll get you the parliamentary procedure book. This committee will operate under the suggested rules of procedure for small local governments boards, and we've got those books for you. Thought you had one of those, and that'll just help with some of the procedural aspects. So with this committee, I don't expect a quorum to be a problem, as engaged as I expect for you to be, but technically you're going to have 7 voting members of that 13 residents before you can conduct business. And so I say all that because I don't plan to be very involved with this committee. I don't plan to be at all your meetings, and I just want to make sure everybody gets started off right as far as following the ordinance and just staying on track with everything. And once you're off and running well with that, I hope to step aside for the most part and let this committee work the way it should. And this ordinance also talks about attendance, what keeps a member in good standing, and I'll read you verbatim this part. If a committee member misses more than 25% of the regular meetings within a 12-month period, the chair will inform the manager with a recommendation for either a removal or continuance on the committee. Point being, please make it. We realize you all lead busy lives, but we went into this that this was a twice-a-month commitment, and so enough said about that. This, as an ad hoc committee, this doesn't operate under our consolidated committee ordinance. That's why it has a standalone ordinance that I'm speaking from. And One of the parameters or rules of this committee is that there aren't any subcommittees, so you might be used to forming those, but be sure not to go there. You need to keep it in this committee as far as the charge. And I'll let the attorney in just a minute speak a little bit more about the ethics and conflicts of interest. Again, this committee's role is an advisory one, but it's a critical advisory one for this town and for our growth. There are parameters in here if it ever becomes an issue, complaints against committee members, grounds for removal of a committee member. We don't expect to have to go there, but I want you to know if you ever get in those kind of situations and are really questioning the conduct of a committee member, you have an ordinance. You're not on your own. You've got ordinances. We've got a lot here to help guide and lead you. And that's the biggest part I have, and I'll let our attorney speak a little bit more about his part.
Good evening, everybody. I'm William Hill, the town attorney, if I haven't been able to meet you before. Really just a couple of things. I know you have a lot on your plate. First, you're a public committee, so everything that you do needs to be done in public and open to the public. Scott mentioned a quorum. Anytime there's going to be could be a quorum of you, we need to give public notice well in advance of that. So unfortunately, can't call each other up and say, okay, let's go get 7 of us and talk about it unless we get public notice well in advance, okay? With regard to ethics and conflicts, speak as a board. Obviously express all your opinions as forcefully, respectfully and forcefully as you need to in this room, but outside the room, act like a committee. Please do not, I would request, go out publicly and undermine the integrity of the board by casting doubt on, things that were done in the event that you're, not in the majority. If there are conflicts, like Scott already alluded to, we can resolve those. But good luck. If anyone ever has any questions for me, I'll be back on other occasions, but like Scott, I won't be here for most of your meetings, and it's probably to your pleasure that I will. So anyway, any questions for me, just let me know.
Is that it on the policy and ethics?
It is.
Okay, so now let's talk about just some of the ground rules, and some of these are repetitive to what Scott just said, but I just want to give some guidance to everyone. Please come prepared and be active in the meetings. We're here as a group volunteering, and we have our charge that we'll learn more about. But I just request, and I think that the town and the citizens would love for everyone here to be active. Do your homework. I know this is a lot of stuff here, but most of us are already pretty familiar with most of this. I am not an expert by any means on all of this. That's what we're here for, is to learn and get educated and then make recommendations. So the binders are a great start for where we're going. Please make sure these are off, and during meetings we're not doing that. We take notes on the computers and things like that, but let's turn the phones off and try and avoid any sidebar conversations. This is a public meeting, so when you're talking, let's make sure we're all talking to each other. We're working together on this. I like what he just said at the very end, is we're a board, and so that board needs to act like a board. There's going to be times we will disagree, but please be thoughtful and give everyone respect here. Critique ideas, not people. If you are offended, please bring it up immediately. Don't let it fester. Just say, hey, that doesn't sound right to me, or that offends me. Make sure you bring it up immediately. This is a safe place to do that. There's a lot of myths and rumors out there, so make sure you include supporting evidence when offering an opinion about something. It could be your past, it could be data that you have, but please make sure we're not just putting myths and rumors out there. We are community ambassadors also, so like he already said, this is a public meeting. You will probably be questioned in the community. I know I already have multiple times. So please just discuss the process with everyone. We're here to learn, we're here to do as much as we can to help this town. It will take time for us to learn what we need to do to make the recommendations. So it is a process. We're just starting that process. And then we're here to share our experiences. The last thing, and second to last thing, I hate to bring this up, but I know when everyone talked about going to the grocery store, and this has been a hot topic, threats will not be tolerated, period. If you are ever threatened by anyone, please report it immediately to law enforcement. That is not going to be tolerated at all. That's not the community that we all love, right? Is other people threatening each other. And then last, I will promise you that I will do my best to start the meeting on time. So, without further ado, let's go. Any questions on any of that right now? Yes?
Now, one question maybe that's a little related to what Scott said about attendance. Somewhere I remember the option for us to dial in if we're not able to physically do it. This is our first meeting, I don't see a phone here. Are we gonna have that capability?
It is, this committee does allow teleconferencing. It is a portion, I mean, it's technically allowable, but I don't really know what the capability here yet is to do that. And
Well, I think all you need is a telephone line,
if you
power
had to do it
source, a
right
nice
now,
Polycon phone.
you just have to use a cell phone, and that's not ideal. It's a little bit tough to make that work in a group this big.
Not really. I
If
think
unless
in a
we had
business
more.
setting, it's quite easy to have a Polycon phone or some other with microphones for the whole group. I think some of us that have to travel for business, we're able to attend these meetings at night on the phone, but we can't always be here in Summerfield. So I think that would really help out in the meeting.
Yeah, so is that something we can look into?
Why don't you get a read, how does the rest of the committee feel about that option? And I assume that everyone understands it's so much more important and more relevant to be here and look each other in the face and see what's going on. But I think it would be good to get a committee-wide feel for whether that should be allowed as part of the committee's protocol. What do you?
Does anybody have a strong
I
feeling
hear
one
you,
way or another?
it sounds like it does sound like a nice option to have, especially if you can't make it, you can still be present. But I just wouldn't want it to start getting abused, because it sounds nice. I mean, I'd much rather be sitting back in my recliner right now, just talking to you guys, but, so, just as long as it wasn't abused, I guess that would be the thing.
And let me clarify something about that. So the council passed this ordinance, and it does say that it's allowed. So I don't think it's really appropriate to potentially override that. But with that said, I think it is a bit of a challenge without adding some technology to this. But just briefly, what it says is that the ordinance says it's allowed as long as the member not in attendance can hear and participate effectively, and the minutes should reflect any teleconferencing participation.
If you are dialing in, if we had the phone and you're dialing in, does that mean you're present or you're not present?
I would assume it means you're present.
It means you're present. Everyone just has to be aware. You have to have full communication in both directions. So
I think it's a really good idea. I mean, just from the standpoint of, I agree that it shouldn't be taken advantage of, but there may be situations where people just can't be present. And if they're dialing in, that's better than not being.
And in the spirit of that, the other one sentence I hadn't read is, every effort will be made by members to attend all committee meetings. So this was a carryover from a policy with our town council, and the intent and the spirit of that is, you're gonna be at the meetings unless you absolutely have to, and then it's an option.
It might be nice to get it all set up now, so that as time goes on and the holidays hit, flu season hits, that we're not scrambling when someone's not present.
Jason, you had a question?
I think it's a good idea. I think, you know, we've had a bunch of people volunteer who, it's not the type of group who's gonna try to skip out. You know, we're already all in a sense. But if I remember correctly, if you're on the phone, you're not technically a voting
you're present, but you're not able to vote, is that correct?
No, this, in this ordinance, it says, it's allowed, so it's.
So it wouldn't affect necessarily.
You can set, within the limits of the ordinance, you can set your procedures and we can talk it out. I'm just trying to envision over the next several months, definitely there will be 2 or 3 times where there will be voting on your recommendations. And I'll get into that, but I would not envision that at every meeting there will be voting on the substance of what you're discussing. That's,
I attended a lot of Board of Commissioner meetings over the last couple of years, and Commissioner Coleman frequently calls in because of our health issues. It presents some of a challenge, but she's able to listen, but if you've got 10 or 12 people that want to talk, the board's only 9, you have 15 people, it makes it very difficult. So if you have more than 1 or 2 people on the phone, it's not going to work very well.
Do you feel comfortable facilitating that?
yes, we just need to realize that even though we'll try to get the best technology to make it so everybody can hear, we've all been in conference calls, it's not ideal. I think there's something I would suggest, that if you know that you're not going to be able to attend a meeting, or you get sick on the day of, let Andrew know so the chair knows. And then if we need to make adjustments with the technology so that conference calls will work. But you also know your meeting schedule, so that to the degree that you can control your schedule, it's, I think, as Jason, you implied, people who signed up for this and were chosen will probably try to the degree that you can, make your schedule fit the schedule of this committee. Eric?
Andrew, is this the intended permanent venue for the meetings?
It's my understanding.
Okay. And my experience on a number of boards, especially Carolina Bank Board, is that it's very, very important to have that capability available so that people can participate, because one reality is when you've got a group like this, with professional people and committed people, they're not going to be available all the time, and health issues come up and so forth.
I don't think a cell phone, so my recommendation is we can't do it with a cell phone. I mean, it's gotta be something that has speakers.
Let me work that out with the fire station.
Definitely just won't work. So,
General agreement within the ordinance, figure out, we'll see that the telephone technology can.
And I do have one other thing, excuse me. We had put the election of the secretary and vice chair at the beginning for a reason. And the reason is that we need a secretary right now to be able to do it. We're off to a bad start. We don't want to leave it up to our bug media here to do that. If we want to pick it back up later, like you suggested, somebody needs to start.
I'll act, I've been acting,
Okay.
if that's appropriate. I can,
Yeah, just
if you can
cover it
consider me
until
to have been
you
acting
get-
as a
you get
secretary
somebody
from the
later.
start.
do we need to have a motion for Carrie to take notes and
Um,
take the secretaries?
No, I think that's appropriate to.
And we had discussed that before.
Okay, so you're gonna jump into the process then.
Okay, a little bit on process. I think that it might help to re-review what the ordinance says. And Scott was referring to it. It's a very succinct ordinance. I think it's very direct. But within it, if you dig into what is the purpose of the committee, these are the sort of highlights of it. And this is the long version. You can read it. To engage representative community stakeholders, that's you, in review of the current UDO draft substantive issues with the goal of shaping a final UDO draft that is more congruent with the current comprehensive plan. Now to drill down a little bit, and this is just my take on, well, what are the key words?
It's to review, your charge is to review the current UDO draft. Review the current draft. And in the course of these meetings and months, you will get deeper and deeper, and you will read and reread and hear more about that UDO draft as you look at it and go through your review. With substantive issues, the council wanted you to look at the most substantive development issues that are in that UDO draft. And we will take some time at the next meeting on August 3rd to talk out and to flag and raise a set of substantive issues. Council didn't tell you what those substantive issues are. That's something that we see as you as a committee, with your background that you presented today, and through an exercise that we will engage in at the August 3rd meeting, identify what are the most substantive issues that you want to use in looking at this ordinance. The goal is, and this is council's ordinance word, shaping the final UDO draft. Shaping, and you know, Millie, I think you said we're not all going to be happy with everything, but you're going to be massaging and reworking and formulating a set of recommendations about that draft so that the draft will help carry out, will help the town council and the other boards that are working in the town carry out the comprehensive plan. Congruent is the word, congruent with the comprehensive plan. And ultimately, you're advising the zoning board. You're not advising city council. There's going to be, the zoning board is going to be involved. You're making your recommendations on the UDO draft to the zoning board. And we would envision that at the end of your work, there will be a collection of recommendations on that draft. There will be a final report that will be presented to the zoning board. And of course, when it's in that final form, you will be asked to vote on it to agree that this is the report to send forward. So that's the charge. But any feedback on it, or any sort of what does that word really mean that we need to flag now? That gives some pretty good guidance, I think, though, of what it is.
Just a question on the substantive issues. One of the things that I think we could really get ourselves bogged down in is detail. At what level do you decide this is too much detail, let's stay at a higher level? How do you make those decisions?
I think, there's no easy answer, but I would envision, and we'll get into this really seriously at the August 3rd meeting, the substantive issues might be 2 or 3 word topics that you think are most important to look at how this ordinance will help carry out the comprehensive plan. I can brainstorm them, I think you can brainstorm them, but we need to, we aren't going to look at 45 substantive issues. That would be terribly unmanageable. It may be that the committee would in that next meeting have 5 to 8 to 10 issues that are most substantive. There's a lot of others, and I know it's easy to get lost in the weeds, as we say. It's important, and this is just my take on that ordinance. What the committee is not charged to do, you're not charged to write the UDO ordinance. You're asked to review what has already been drafted. You're told to look at the draft, the most recent draft, and Carrie in future meetings will sort of bring us forward on what that draft says. And this is a little lighthearted, but it's your charge is not to please everybody in Summerfield. You're coming, you're stakeholders, you've been appointed from different parts of the community. But I think you're embarking on a very exciting process and project to develop this set of recommendations. Again, I come back to what Millie said. You're not going to satisfy everybody in the community. We hope that by the time that you finish your work, you will be largely in agreement on the recommendations you're setting forward. Without getting also into too much detail, you aren't the Supreme Court. We've all been around a lot of organizations. There may be some issues where you feel so strongly that it's 12 to 1 or 11 to 2, but you want to make sure that your voice appears in the final report. That you have a strong minority viewpoint. I think that as your work goes forward, you form the recommendations so that we can be respectful of everybody. There may be some opinions, you just want them noted. And we'll try to make sure that we capture that as well. And so anything more on the charge?
There will be a format and a structure to that we've been discussing, and we didn't bring that with us tonight. A sort of, Bill and I have talked about a spreadsheet type format that compares policies to the articles in the ordinance and lights up the cells by color. This substantive issue is where UDO and or where comp plan and ordinance intersect, here, here, and here. So we don't want to go into it too far, but there has to be a structure like that, and the committee needs to agree that that is the best structure to cover it, because we don't want to be in the weeds, but we also don't want to be telling you what I think you need to be looking at. That's the last thing you have to do.
Question, Gary?
Yeah.
Well, one thing I reflect on is the fact that, in a business organization, you may have personnel policies, but you may have behaviors that are different personnel policies or and accepted behaviors. And at some point in time, you have to say, is the policy manual wrong, or is the behavior wrong, which needs to be modified? In this particular case, if there's a question about the ordinance versus the comprehensive plan, we are looking strictly at the ordinance, not at reviewing the comprehensive plan for purposes of making any recommendations on change. The plan is the plan, correct?
However,
we are reviewing how the ordinance applies to the plan.
There is, and I don't know who's best, there may be times when if a valid point gets brought up about the comprehensive plan itself or about the ordinance itself, we need to